So we're starting out with the 77s of Daniel.
Yeah, this is the foundation of so much of biblical prophecy. I mean, Revelation comes, the tribulation period comes from this. This is so important to understand that. And it also links up with what is happening now, because here we're talking about a 70-year period. We're talking about Israel right now. We're in the 70th anniversary from the rebirth of Israel, prophetic. We're in the 70th year. And what this 77s of Daniel is linked to a proclamation that goes forth by a world leader concerning Jerusalem, which just has happened in our midst. So that is the context of the 77s of Daniel. So we're in a very prophetic period.
Wow.
So this is so, amazing. In fact, there was an Orthodox Jewish rabbi from Europe. When he saw the 77s of Daniel talking about when Messiah has to come, he became a believer in Jesus. And he came to America, started an organization called American Board of Mission to the Jews, which then gave birth to an organization called Jews for Jesus.
Oh, my
And also
goodness.
Chosen People Ministry, which is the new name of it. All that came from a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, who saw this and said, I can't argue with this. So that's how powerful this is. And it's also so amazing how it's a mathematical countdown to the coming of Messiah, how exact God is. We're seeing how God is in every detail and how exact. That's what this is. So the context, to set it up, Jerusalem has been destroyed, and now Daniel is in exile, and Daniel is praying. Solomon said, Lord, when he built the temple, he said, if they sin and then they turn back to you, you judge them, they turn back and they pray towards this place, have mercy and restore them. Daniel is doing exactly what Solomon said. And that's the same passage where God answered Solomon and said, I'll tell you my answer. If my people who are called by my name, that comes from here. I mean, from that, which now Daniel is doing it. So it tells you how powerful this is to be praying and interceding for a land, because that's exactly, if you read Daniel 9, it starts off, all he's doing is praying and interceding. We have sinned, have mercy on us, Lord, have mercy. He's doing if my people. That's the whole first part of Daniel 9. That's how powerful that is. And God answers him by sending an angel to him. The angel is named Gabriel, or we know him as Gabriel, and he says, this is what he says. He says, Daniel, this is verse 24. 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to put an end of sin, to atone for iniquity or evil, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. 77s to all that. Now, this is major because he's saying to end sin, to atone for all the redemption and the sealing up of prophecy is all in these 77s. Now, a lot of times there are rabbis or anti-missionaries who will say, that's not about Messiah, this is about some other guy, because in the Bible, sometimes the word Messiah or the word anointed is used for other people. But you can't make that argument, because if it says an anointed king or an anointed priest, that's one thing, or I've anointed Cyrus. It says, but here it simply says Mashiach. It's in the Bible, Messiah. When Mashiach comes, there's no qualifying. This is Messiah. It says, and then by the way, in the English, it doesn't say an anointed prince. It says Messiah, the prince or the ruler. So it says Mashiach. It's actually saying there, and also it's talking about the ending of sin. That's not any guy. That has to be the Messiah. So this is telling you exactly when Messiah has to come. In the ancient versions of the Bible, the Septuagint, which is before the New Testament, when they translated into Greek, the Jewish people, what it says in Greek, it says 77s until Christ comes, is what it says in the Septuagint, until the Christ comes. So what does this mean here? It says it is giving a cutoff date for Messiah to come. It says 77s will come, and then it says the sanctuary and the city will be destroyed. Well, what's the city? It has to be Jerusalem. This is for your city. What's the sanctuary? Has to be the temple. And so it says until that, so Messiah will come, and then the city, Jerusalem, will be destroyed, and the temple will be destroyed. Now, we know when that happened. That happened in the year 70 AD. So what does that tell you right away? Even if someone wants to argue about anything else, it tells you, first of all, that no matter what you think, or no matter what the rabbis think, Messiah of Israel had to have come before the year 70 AD. And there have been a lot of people who've come after that in Jewish history, said, I'm the Messiah, and they followed him. but nobody could be the Messiah except the one who came before 70 AD. And do we have any candidates for that? There's no candidate except Yeshua, Jesus of Nazareth. There's nobody. There's not even a runner-up. So there's only one. So he came at the exact time. Now he says 77s. Now what are the 77s? Well, here is where the mystery of the shemitah has to do with this. This has to do with the shemitah. It says at the beginning, Daniel says, I was pondering the words of the prophet Jeremiah when God told him that they will be in exile for 70 years. Why were they in exile? We're talking about the 70 years. We're going to get this. About 70 years have to do with where we are right now.
Wow.
Why were they there for 70 years? The Bible says it. It says it from Moses. He says, if you go against God, if you sin, if you rebel, God will remove you from the land, and God will have the land rest for all the shemitahs, all the Sabbath years that you did not let it rest. Okay, so now the land is going to rest for all the Sabbaths that you didn't observe. They didn't observe the Sabbath. They also sinned against God. So how many Sabbaths did the land rest for? I mean, did the land not have? 70. They sinned 70 Sabbath years. They didn't observe it, okay? So you got 70 years where the land is now having Sabbath, and now the people are in exile, okay? So the 70 years are 70 shemitahs. You understand? There's 70 Sabbath years.
Yes.
So it actually, and hang in with me if you're not a math person, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. That means that for how many years does it take to break 70 Sabbath years? I mean, 490 years is how long it takes to have 70 Sabbath years, every seventh year. So you have 490 years. They didn't do the 70 Sabbath years, and so you got 70 Sabbath years. So now Daniel is being told, now we're going to take those 70 years and we're going to make them 490 again. It's going to be 70 Sabbath years. So therefore, now he's talking about a 490-year period. Are you with me with this?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so you have 490 years. They broke the Sabbath. It becomes judgment of the 70 Sabbath years within that period. Now we're going to reverse that. We're going to take the 70 Sabbath years, and we're going to make them 490 for redemption until Messiah comes. First it was to judgment. Now we're reversing it, and it's going to come to redemption. Okay?
Amazing.
So that's why we know it's got to be Sabbath. It can't be 77s of days because you could never rebuild Jerusalem and do all this in that. It's got to be 70 Sabbaths of years. So we got a 490-year period. Okay, and what's going to happen in that what's going to happen? It says until Mashiach, and again, there's no doubt this is Messiah, until Messiah comes. So Messiah is going to come within this 490-year period. You are to know, verse 25, and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Mashiach, Messiah, the ruler, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. It will be built again with plaza, with moat, even in times of distress. So here, when you add that up, it says 7 sevens and 62 sevens. What does that come out to? 69 sevens. So it's coming up to almost 70 sevens, but it's missing 1 week. Okay, so that's we stop right there. Now, what's going to happen? Then it says in Hebrew, Yikarat Mashiach, which says then Messiah will be cut off. What does that mean? That expression in Hebrew means when somebody is cut off from their people. And when it says when they've sinned, they're going to be cut off. Messiah is going to be cut off from the Jewish people, his own people. He's going to be cut off, and which is exactly what happened to Jesus, Messiah. But also it can mean killed. Messiah will be killed. He'll be cut off and killed. He's been cut off from his people for virtually 2,000 years. So that happens. So Messiah comes. He's got to come before the temple's destroyed, and he's got to be cut off and killed. And if you see the matching thing, Isaiah 53 is where you get all the detail about Messiah being cut off. So it says he was cut off out of the land of the living for the sin of my people. So you see the whole death of Messiah. Now, something that people miss, and it's really cool that's in there. When does the angel appear to Daniel to tell him? Daniel says he came at the time of the evening sacrifice, or the evening offering. Now, here's the weird thing. The temple's destroyed. There's no sacrifice. So why date it to the sacrifice? The evening sacrifice is the last sacrifice of the day. It's the final sacrifice. It closes everything. So why did Gabriel come at that exact time? And Daniel records it. Because this whole prophecy is going to be about the final sacrifice, which is Messiah. So he gives the timing of the daily final sacrifice.
Wow.
So now another connection. We know about the Magi. The Magi come and they find Messiah. Where are the Magi from? Where do they come from? They come from Persia. They are Iranians. They loved Israel back then. So they are Persian. And so how did the Magi know to come at that time? They said, well, they saw the star. Okay, you can go through that. They saw a star linked to Judah, linked to a king. Okay, but still, you need a lot to, when do you know to go that this is the time for the birth of the Messiah? How do they know that? Well, here's a fascinating thing. Daniel, in the Bible, it says that Daniel was made the chief of the wise men, in the Hebrew, the Mag, or the Magi.
Oh,
Daniel,
my goodness.
Daniel, the one who got the exact countdown to the timing of when he's going to come, got the vision, got the timing when he was in Persia, Babylon, and undoubtedly he would have recorded it. He did. Undoubtedly the people around him would have known it, which would have also included the Magi. And so they would have the countdown to know about, well, he's got to come around this time. So amazing link to this whole thing. Now in going, when does this countdown begin? In order to know when he's coming, you got to know when it starts. Well, it says when the proclamation, and we can, again, we are relating to it in 2017, a proclamation by a world leader concerning Jerusalem and the rebuilding of Jerusalem. So when was it? Well, there's one done by Cyrus, and then there's another one, but it says when it'll be rebuilt with wall and all these things. Well, the fullest proclamation that has the rebuilding of not just the beginning of the temple, but the wall and all that, was done by a Persian king named Artaxerxes. And when you take the date of when he made that proclamation, here's what's going to happen. It's going to come out, it's 457 BC. So if we start the clock, start the timer right there, put in the 77s of Daniel, it's going to lead you to about the year 27 AD. Okay, now why is that important? Because if you put all the calculations together, and most everything points to this, the New Testament, other things, Messiah would have first come to Jerusalem in 27 AD.
Oh, my
the exact
goodness.
countdown. The word for, when it says 77s, the word is sheva. Sheva is 7, sheva. But in Hebrew, it also means something else. It also means oath, or the promise, or the swearing of God. So you could take it as the 70 also, it's about the oath of God. It's about 77s until God fulfills all his promises, all his oaths. And there's one time where God says, I am giving you my oath, I'm swearing by myself, is when Abraham offers up Isaac. And it's in the place, where? In Jerusalem. And God says, and then it says, it shall be done in that place. It shall be seen in that place. God will provide the lamb in that place. So that's telling you the place, and it has the word of the oath. And now this is using the same word to tell you the timing of when it's all going to happen. So God gives the place, God gives the timing, and it's all about the fulfillment of that. Now, I mentioned that Gabriel came at the time of the evening sacrifice. What time was that? Well, we know when it was. The final sacrifice was offered up at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. Well, interesting, because when was Messiah offered up? When did he die? 3 o'clock, the exact time of the final sacrifice.
Wow.
And he is the final sacrifice.
Yes, he is.
And so that's linked to it's almost hidden in the prophecy. It's saying Messiah's going to be cut off, but it's actually giving you the time of day when he's going to be cut off. I mean, the timing is amazing. But now, there is it said it would be 16, if you add it up, it's 69 sevens, so that leaves one missing 7. One missing 7 is the 7 that comes at the end. It's like the stopwatch stops, and now it's waiting until the end of the age for the last 7. What is the last 7? The last 7 is the book of Revelation. The last 7 is the tribulation. It says at the end of Daniel, it says them, because it says 69 sevens. You say, well, where's that last 7? Well, if you keep reading, it says after Messiah comes, Messiah's going to die, Jerusalem's going to be destroyed, but then it says this, and after 62 sevens, Messiah shall be cut off and shall have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end will be with a flood. Okay, so what is that talking about? The people of the prince who is to come will destroy the Jerusalem, the city, and the sanctuary, the temple. Well, we know who did that. Who did that? The Romans did that.
Yes.
So what it's saying right here in Daniel is whoever destroys that city and whoever destroys that sanctuary, a ruler who's going to be of them in some way is going to come for the last 7. And who is that? That is the Antichrist. He is going to be linked to the Roman Empire. It's right there in Daniel. And so he's going to come, and then it goes further. It says, and then it says he shall make a covenant with many for 1 7, 1 week, 1 7. But in the middle of the 7, he will cause the sacrifice and the offering to cease, and the wings of abomination shall come to the one who makes it desolate. This is abomination, desolation here, until destruction is poured out. So what's this all telling? This is just one little thing, and yet it's pointing to the whole end time scenario. The Antichrist will come. He will make a covenant for 1 7. That's a 7-year. That's the missing 7-year period. The missing shemitah thing. That 7-year period. And he will make a covenant, and then there will be a temple rebuilt, because it says there's going to be a sacrifice. So the temple's got to be rebuilt just by that. And then what else? In Jerusalem. So Jerusalem's got to be back. Temple's got to be back. And the Antichrist is going to come there, make a covenant. And then it says in the middle of that 7, he will then cause the word abomination, desolation is in there. Okay. So what's the middle of 7? What's the 7 divided by 2 equals 3.5.
3.5, yeah.
So 3.5 is an incredibly prophetic. It all comes from here. What do we have 3.5? It goes on. I mean, if you read about prophecy, what does it say? It says, Daniel says, how long is this going to happen? And the angel answers, for a time, times, and half a time. What's that? A time is 1 year. Times are 2 years. Half a time is half a year. How many years? 3.5 years will be the desolation. Revelation speaks of 42 months. The woman will be hidden 42 months, will flee from Jerusalem 42 months. What's 42 months? 3.5 years. It talks about the holy city being trampled down. It talks about 1,260 days. How long is that? 3.5 years. Everything, the 2 witnesses, everything 3.5 years. It all comes from Daniel. It all comes from this, and it all points, this is what sets the whole stage for the end of the age. And the interesting thing here now, notice something, this whole prophecy is linked to Messiah's first coming, and it begins with a proclamation by a world leader concerning Jerusalem. So if Messiah's first coming is prepared by a proclamation by a world leader concerning Jerusalem, then how about his second coming is linked to the proclamation of a world leader concerning Jerusalem, like Donald Trump? I mean, it just happened. Here's another one. That's where we are right now.
Because Cyrus was the first one.
Yes. And now we talk about another Cyrus. And but to understand how important this is, the entire 77s are built on a world leader making a proclamation concerning Jerusalem. I mean, that is something very big.
How far into the final days are we, do you think? After looking at the Daniel time clock, where does this put us right now? Where are we living right now? What next could happen to Jerusalem? Donald Trump is on a coin with
Cyrus.
So here we are with a president who the Jews are they were asking Trump, and they say it publicly, help us rebuild the temple. How fast could the temple actually be rebuilt with the way we can build today and with what they have prepared already?
Still, God has to do a major thing to clear that, to make that happen on the mountain. But
he's done everything else.
He can do it. Yeah, he can trump everything in a moment.
That's right.
So the thing is that in the time of Messiah, the temple took a long time, but we have ways of doing it faster. Of course, God can do it however in His moment. And we're speaking about Trump, and I'm going to say some things about him. You mentioned how he may not even know, and I'm sure he's heard things, but we don't know how much he understands about what's happening, how he's being used. But Cyrus, we don't know that he knew the reason for it. And Jehu, these are all vessels, okay? And he does. We mentioned on another program how with Jehu, he had the prophet pray over him and basically anoint him. And as you said, that Donald Trump has had more people, as far as we can see, who have anointed him, literally laid hands on him, prophesied to him, than any other president in our history that we can know of. I mean, and it's not the way we would think that. Just like at the inauguration, there were more people, born-again people, praying than any other inauguration in history. That's the sovereignty of God. We wouldn't maybe expect that, but that's what I've heard, and you know this from everybody around him, is that he says that when they mention God, and they mention the Word of God, and they mention people of God, he almost like stops. He zeroes in that he reverences it. He may not know all things, but he reverences it. He watches this program, as we know as well. So that's all that we need is a sovereign God, and God will do his purpose.
So Jerusalem is really, for some reason, it's the apple of God's eye somehow.
Yeah.
It's God's,
and
God's city.
And we talk about timepieces. The Jewish people are his timepiece. Jerusalem is the place that is his timepiece too. When Jerusalem is back, when it's alive, when it's there, God's purposes are moving. When it's gone, there's a hold on his prophetic purposes. Jerusalem has been gone basically for 2,000 years since it was destroyed. When Jesus prophesied, it was destroyed. So it's like so that stops. The clock stops. And God is still doing a whole nother work, but his prophetic thing for the end is going to hold until Jerusalem comes back.
Okay, let's go on
Yeah.
with part 2 of today's study of what does the Bible say will happen in Jerusalem
Yeah.
in the end time.
And this goes with what you asked. Zechariah 12 says, in that day, talking about the end times, I will make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples trembling. Judah, or Israel, will be besieged, under siege, as well as Jerusalem. On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered around her, against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all nations. Everyone who tries to move them will injure themselves. Everyone who tries. So what's it saying? God is saying in the last days, number one, he's going to bring the Jewish people back to the land of Israel. That's number one. Secondly, he's going to bring them back to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is going to be alive again. Remember, it's been gone for 2,000 years. Most of 2,000 years, it was nothing. I mean, it was Mark Twain went there in the 9th century. He said, it's rags, it's a pauper village, there's nothing. It had a few thousand people at the most, and it was nothing. And so Jerusalem was resurrected, and the Jewish people had to come back, so that's where we are. 1967 has to happen, Six-Day War, for this Zechariah 12 to happen. So then it says, Jerusalem's going to be back with the Jewish people, but then it says that it's going to be the focus of the entire world. Now, again, this is a city of rocks. It's a city you can walk around the old city like in an hour or something. That's how small it is as far as the biblical city. And the whole world is going to be up in arms about this little city. Well, that sounds crazy, but that's exactly where we are.
Right now.
There have been more resolutions, by the way, in the United Nations condemning Israel and Jerusalem than any other nation on earth. In fact, there's been more resolutions condemning Israel than all the other nations of the world combined.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, it didn't condemn, genocide and all those things that are happening in other nations and tyranny, but this little tiny Israel and little tiny Jerusalem. But that's exactly what God says. So with the fact that Jerusalem's in the news again, that it's still there, that's telling us we are approaching that day. And so that the entire world, so right now it says the world, the nations are going to try to move it. Well, we got how do you move a city? I mean, you dig it up. How do you move a city? You move its borders, you move its sovereignty. You say that this is not part of Israel, this is part of another nation. That's how you move it. It's exactly what the nations of the world have been trying to do. They're trying to move Jerusalem.
Right.
And they just did it. They just, again, 1 week before Trump, 1 week before that declaration, they tried to move Jerusalem and said, this is not Israel, this is Palestinian territory, and Israel has no right over it. That's this. Now, one day, as it's moving, and you can say, well, that's crazy. You think if you weren't alive now, you'd say, why would the whole nation, the whole world come against this little city? But you can see it building. You can see it already coming because you have no nation and no issue of Jerusalem the world is so up in arms against as this issue right now.
Right.
That's right.
I mean, amazing. I mean, where one man says, you know what, Jerusalem's the capital of Israel, and the world explodes.
Right,
I mean, what is that about?
Yeah,
What is that?
exactly.
Now, speaking of that one man, because we've been talking about that one man.
Yeah.
In the Bible, to understand it, God uses the words of a king. He uses the words of kings to confirm his purposes, to establish his purposes, and to unleash his purposes. He uses that again and again. That's what this is about. And he used Cyrus, of course, and this is everything's coming full circle. Cyrus issues a proclamation, a declaration that by which the Jewish people, it unleashes God's purposes. They return to Zion, they return to Jerusalem, and he used the words of other kings to do the same thing, of Persia, and he uses it to confirm something. Well, this is not just once, because at the beginning of last century, or World War I, out of World War I comes the Balfour Declaration. What's the significance? That's when Britain, that was the big power back then, the British Empire, they give a declaration saying that now, because they just got the land back, so the first time in 2,000 years, the land of Israel was in the hands of a people who weren't against the Jewish people. They were friends of the Jewish people. Why? Because there were Christians in Britain, and there had been revival in Britain. That's how important this is. Even I said with a rabbi of Israel have been saying, thank God for the Christians, because this whole thing with Trump wouldn't happen without them. That's true. And so with the Balfour Declaration. Balfour was a Christian. The people around him were Christians. So they knew about prophecy. But so what happened is, so they got Jerusalem, but even just as they were getting Jerusalem, they say, now we believe this land should be a homeland for the Jewish people. That's the Balfour Declaration. Once that went, that inaugurates the purposes of God. That more Jewish people are coming back now. Hey, before we were coming back under a Muslim rule, they were never going to do anything, but we were going to, by faith, farm the land. Now we have a promise that one day this will be our homeland. So now they're coming. So the word of the king ushers in, inaugurates, unleashes the next plan of God. That's the significance. Then we have 1948. We're talking about 70 years. 70 years ago, now America is the superpower of the world, emerges from World War II, and you have a man who is now the president who never expected it. They talk about it surprises. He never expected to be president. The guy was a shopkeeper, Harry Truman Center, and then he's just doing his thing. But he read the Bible. He knew from a boy, he knew about the Bible, Baptist, and then all of a sudden Franklin Roosevelt dies just before the end of the war. Now he ends up saying yes to Israel. Okay, so Israel, not only, by the way, Truman was behind the vote in the UN. He was the one getting that vote together as well. And he's the one who then, whatever it was, 11 minutes after midnight when Israel came into existence, America's the first nation on earth to say, we recognize this Jewish nation. So Truman. Later on, the chief rabbi of Israel would come to Truman and say, God put you in your mother's womb for that moment.
Amazing.
And Truman broke down and wept.
Oh, my goodness.
And later on, Truman would say, listen to his words. Truman would say, these are the words of Truman. He would say, I am Cyrus.
That's shocking.
Yeah. And here's another man who had no idea he would be there. And all of a sudden he's there. He didn't realize. And even when he's battling, he had no idea how he's being used in prophecy. And then only at the end, only later on did he realize it. And he broke down more than once over this. This meant everything to him. He realized he was used.
It's so amazing, people.
It's incredible.
God uses the unlikely. I was a little boy when Truman was president. You say in your writings, you say, who was Trump born under then?
Okay, here amazing thing. Here, listen what we got here. We have a Cyrus there.
Yes.
And we have a Cyrus now. We have two Cyruses. This Cyrus was born under the reign of the other Cyrus. Wow. That when Truman had come to power, Trump was born. Now, we've been talking about two different things, and we want to put it totally together. We've been talking about, hey, it's the 70th year anniversary, and then we've been talking about what happened in the 70th year. But get this from the Bible. This is putting it together. In the Bible, you have a 70-year period, and then it's at the end of that 70-year period that the proclamation goes forth. 70-year period, and then the king makes the proclamation concerning Jerusalem. That's Cyrus, that's Trump. 70 years, then it comes to the end, then the king makes the proclamation concerning Jerusalem. It wasn't just about Israel at Cyrus. He literally, listen, what Cyrus did in that proclamation is he actually recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. So here you've got 70 years in the Bible. At the end of 70 years, the king arises who makes a proclamation that recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
on the 7th, and what does Trump do on the 70th anniversary of the rebuilding of Israel? He recognizes Jerusalem.
Like
and
Cyrus.
as Cyrus
Yeah.
did. Cyrus was a 70
Yes.
year.
Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. While previous presidents have made this a major campaign promise, they failed to deliver. Today, I am delivering.
He did the same
America.
thing at the same time. And here's another thing about it. You got 70 years, but not just that. Let me tell you something else. What happened 70 years ago? The UN votes Israel, okay? They vote a division of the land, Arab and Jews. But when they do that, they also do something else. They separate Jerusalem from the Jewish people at the same time. They said Jerusalem will not be of Israel, okay? So that's the time that the world actually separated Jerusalem at the same time. So now it's this, listen, in the Bible, in Cyrus' time, what was that 70 years? It was 70 years from the Jewish people being separated from Jerusalem, and then Cyrus is the first recognition of Jerusalem. So what happened 70 years ago? That not only was Israel voted on, but also Jerusalem was separated, and no power has ever undone that until Trump. 70 years, now it's undone. Now the first power says, no, Jerusalem is of Israel. That's exactly the pattern of Cyrus.
And Cyrus did it in the first year of his
Well,
reign.
it says in the first year of his coming to world power, it says he made it. So Trump did it in the first year of his coming
The
to world power.
proclamation.
This is incredible.
And notice something with that first year. He made it just about by 30 days. It was in November. It was in December. So he just made it, but God had made sure it was in the first year. Listen, again, God is perfect. God is on the throne.
Yes.
He has no intention of vacating that throne.
Right.
Everything is in his hands,
Amen.
and his purposes will continue no matter what's happening in the world. You just make sure you're in the center of his purposes, and you will prevail. When you're there in Israel, you do sense something.
You do.
And the thing is that, you know, when that declaration came, I mean, Israel loves Donald Trump. Most of the Israelis, they see him like Cyrus because of this. And there's a sense, and remember when these declarations from Cyrus to Truman to the Balfour, when it first came out, you didn't see the full effect of the thing. It starts, but it started, each case, the effect would keep going and going and going. It would be revealed over the years. So what Donald Trump did, same thing. This thing went forth, but the full force of what this is all about is going to be revealed in the days to come. And you can sense that. That's why the Temple Mount people are printing up the coins for the temple, you know, because that's also linked to all this. When we talk about there has to be a temple again. I was at the Western Wall at the 70th anniversary, and there was just worship and praise and all those things. But all these things coming together now with Trump, I mean, it's amazing.
Today we're going to talk about timing.
Yes. Yes.
Today.
We spoke last time about the mystery with the 70 years in the Bible. At the end of the 70 years comes the proclamation, and from Cyrus back then, and then we saw in our own day, God did it the same way, 70 years of Israel, proclamation, Jerusalem. But it's even more exact because when Israel was voted on in the United Nations, it was at the very end of November and 1947. So if you fast forward 70 years, that was the week. The anniversary week, now we're not just talking about years, we're talking about the anniversary week of that was ended on December 6th, 2017. December 6th, 2017 is the date that Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem on the exact, the end of the anniversary week of the 70 years. And he didn't know what I'm sure he wasn't looking saying, let me work this all out. When I was here, and we were speaking about the shemitah, and we were speaking about the Jubilee, remember there were several times I spoke about it. What I said, and I'm not saying that I know these things, but God knows, but I said that, and not that God has to do anything, but in the next Jubilee, that if something is going to happen according to the mystery, it will involve Jerusalem, it will involve the city of Jerusalem, and the restoration, establishing ultimately to the Temple Mount. Now, this is very important because we talked about the Jubilee before, but this is very important. The Jubilee, just so people realize this, there's two reckonings of the Jubilee, and one reckoning is the Hebrew reckoning of on a 49-year cycle. Okay, that I won't go into it, but that's one reckoning. The other reckoning is a standard 50-year cycle on the Western calendar. And so it is on this 50-year calendar that these prophetic things have taken place, and has to do with everything we just saw. Now the question is, so what happened this past year has everything to do with the mystery of the Jubilee. And just for a quick thing for those who don't know, a very quick thing, what is the Jubilee? On the Jubilee, whatever you lost, you get it back. You lost your home, you get it back. You lost your ancestral land, you get it back. You return home, you return to your family, you get reconciled. The possession that was yours, your inheritance, you get it back on the 50th year. Now, it was given to the Jewish people. Now, the Jewish people, it's amazing because the Jewish people are the people who more than any nation lost everything. They lost their land, they lost their ancestral possession, lost Jerusalem, lost their inheritance for 2,000 years. So if they're going to get it back, it's going to be a Jubilee. It's going to be linked to, God's going to link it to the Jubilee, because that's what it is. So for 2,000 years, the Jewish people wander the earth, and the first big thing is the Balfour Declaration, when Britain wins, in World War I, they win Jerusalem under General Allenby. It was under Muslim control for ages. Britain is for the Jewish people. We mentioned they say now there'll be a Jewish homeland. So here's the first restoration. When does it take place? 1917. 1917, we won't go into it, is a year of Jubilee. They shall return home, you shall regain your possession. Jewish people start coming all the more from all over the world, coming back home to their possession. Now it declares, Jubilee is how often? We go by the 50-year calendar. Fast forward, 1917, add 50 years. Where does it take you? It takes you to the year 1967. Next Jubilee year, 1967. What did they get? The Jewish people had Israel, but they didn't have the restoration to Jerusalem. It's the ultimate inheritance, which again, we're on the anniversary of it right now. So here, 1967, what happens? The Arab nations around them, we mentioned, they say we're going to now have a war of annihilation. We're going to wipe them out. And so Israel says we got to strike first. They do. 6-day war. June 7th, the Israeli soldiers enter through the Lion's Gate, and for the first time since Rome, since the Roman Empire, Israeli soldiers are walking the streets of the ancient city. They come to the Western Wall, they weep and pray, and Israel comes back to their inheritance. Second Jubilee, they are restored to their ancestral possession, Jerusalem. So that is now, that's the second. God is so perfect in that Jubilee. But what they didn't get in the Jubilee, when you return home, when you get back your land, it's not just you go back and you go back to the land, but you are given the legal right to that land. It's not just that you take it, it's that it is recognized legally. This is now the deed is yours. They didn't have it since 1967. Every nation said, no, even America said, we're not recognizing it. Nobody recognized it, but it's got to come. So that takes you, let's go now to the next Jubilee. Go 50 years. What year does it take you to? 2017. Jubilee, 2017. What happens in the year of Jubilee? Now, for the first time in 2,000 years, the legal recognition of Jerusalem is given. Restoration to the land. God is so perfect. Yeah. And it not only happened in 2017, it happened within 30 days left. I mean, God just puts it right in there. It happened, it has to happen in that time. Sovereignty, legal status. Not only it was the Jubilee of 1967, okay, it was 50 years after 1967, but it's the double Jubilee of 1917. Okay, in other words, it's the double Jubilee of when Allenby liberated Jerusalem in 1917. It was 1917, but when? It was 1917, December. The declaration came in December, the Jubilee, the double Jubilee, the 100-year anniversary. In fact, the liberation of Jerusalem happened when Allenby liberated it, or when it was liberated, right? It was liberated basically in the beginning, like the first week, around the first week of December. Trump's declaration, first week of December. What happens during the year of Jubilee? You know, this happens in the year of Jubilee. This is the shofar. This is the Jubilee shofar. What happens? The trumpet sounds. It sounds in the year of Jubilee. Now, the prophetic year of Jubilee was 2017. Now, what happened in the year of 2017? That was the year that the president came to power. And the year of Jubilee, the trump begins to sound.
Oh, my.
But think about this too. Think about that. What happens in the year of Jubilee? When this shofar sounds, the land goes back to the original owner. So the trump sounded, and the land goes back to the original owner.
Oh,
The trump sounded.
it's incredible.
When the trump sounds, and he sounded to the world, and when the trump sounds, the original owner gets the legal possession of the land. So Trump sounded, and
Wow.
the land got its legal recognition. At the last Jubilee, 1967, the trumpet was sounded at the Western Wall. Remember that? The rabbi who sounded, when they came to the Western Wall, this rabbi sounded the shofar. And he wasn't
Right.
thinking of Jubilee. But God was. He sounded the Jubilee. And what was the name of the rabbi? The rabbi's name was Rabbi Goren. Okay, Goren. Now we're talking about the Jubilee. The land returns to its original owner, returns to its original state.
Yes.
Okay? They got to the Temple Mount. They were at the Western Wall there. He sounded the Western Wall. Temple Mount's the ultimate. What was the original state of the Temple Mount? The original state of the Temple Mount, it was, remember David bought it? What was it? It was a threshing floor, remember?
Yeah.
Yes.
Threshing floor, but when you read it in the original, it says the threshing floor, it doesn't say threshing floor, it's Hebrew. It's called the Goren. So it's Rabbi Threshing Floor. Rabbi Goren, he the one who sounded the shofar, his name was identifying that the Jubilee returns to its original, the land goes to its original state. The original state was Goren, was threshing floor, and Rabbi Goren, Rabbi Threshing Floor, sounds the trumpet. And now we have President
Rabbi
Trumpet.
Threshing
Now we have President Trumpet. And
That
so,
is
so God, in each one, he
brilliant.
has somebody, and the name is also part of his mystery.